this is Adrian and welcome to part 3 of the horror film ERAS. And in this final video, we're going to be recapping the horror movie genre evolution through the decades. And we're going to be focusing on the different patterns and discussing the different cycles that the genre went through. And then at the end of the video, we're going to talk about the final cycle that we are in now and make a prediction to see what is next for the horror movie genre. So we start off with the 20s with the silent films. We move to the 30s with the invention of sound in movies. Then in the 40s, you had an overload of monster movies that were getting saturated and dying off. Then a new genre emerged in the 50s having to do with the nuclear mega monster movies right after World War II. Everyone was still dealing with, worry about nuclear radiation. And then people were trying to, the movie studios were trying to get people in the theaters and make things more lighthearted. So they were doing the theater gimmicks with the 3D and the electric shock underneath the seats. And one particular movie that comes to mind that really did this was The Tingler, which is one of my favorite movies, where in the actual movie they have a scene in the movie theater and they actually do the gimmicks, so it's like a play on the real life that was going on in the 50s. Then we move over to the 60s, which another new genre emerged based on the social revolution. Things got more serious, having to do with the racial tensions, and then the end of 3D and the gimmicks, pretty much there were no more of those because the mood was too serious. Then we moved to the 70s, which really was dominated by exploitation films, which really, if you think about it, in the 2000s, you had the torture porn. So see how everything has patterns? Exploitation is kind of like the same like torture porn. So, and finally, we moved to the 80s, which had an overload of slasher films, and towards the end, leading into the 90s, it was pretty much dying out. It was a parody, it was a joke, people were getting sick of it. So you see how everything happens in cycles? So this was the first cycle. Let's continue. Now let's get into the horror film cycle 2. So in the early 90s, you had the CGI, or Industrial Lights and Magic. So CGI was like a new invention, and kind of like the 20s when they invented sound. So it was like the newest thing, and everybody was trying to use it and take advantage in the movies. In the mid 90s, you had a renaissance, a rebirth that no one saw coming with Scream and the slasher genre, but it lasted for a short amount of time. Then in the 2000s, you had an amalgamation, like a mix of several subgenres, all fighting against each other to see who will come out on top. And if so, you had the slasher remakes, and also they were mixing it with more gimmicks, like 3D gimmicks. So they were redoing the old slasher movies, but with 3D. And if you really want to get technical, it was in 2009 when Avatar came out with the 3D and James Cameron. So that's where they got the idea to get people back into theaters for practically the same thing, which was just remakes of slashers. Just like in the 50s, monster movies, when they were using the gimmicks and the shock in the theaters and all that. So another subgenre that was getting mixed in was torture porn, just like in the 70s with the exploitation, which was very violent and dark and just exploiting women and, all types of violence in the torture porn with Saw and Hostel. Another subgenre is found footage. Now, I'm not going to say it was like a new invention, but you can kind of attribute it to that, because in 1999 you had the Blair Witch Project, but it didn't really take off until the mid 2000s, or later, I guess in 2009 is when Paranormal Activity came out, and that's when it exploded with found footage. So you could say it's like, the CGI or a 3D or the IMAX type new thing that everybody has to come and see. And finally, the last subgenre is the zombie apocalypse genre, where it dominated, especially with the TV show The Walking Dead. But now it's like at an overload, and I think it's dying off. It's at its dying breath, and people are getting tired of it. They're waiting for something new. And so that's cycle number 2. Now, before I get to cycle 3, I'm going to talk about what I like to call the superhero distraction. Now, you're probably asking, like, what does the superhero genre have to do with horror movies? Well, not really directly anything, but indirectly, when superhero movies burst onto the scene and they really got popular, like with Iron Man, and you had the DC universe, you had the Marvel universe competing against each other. It created a distraction because everybody, all they cared about was superhero movies. Like, who's going to be the next superhero to come out and, be the next movie or the next spin-off, or so no one was really paying attention to really anything else, but especially no one was paying attention to horror movies. They were just focusing on superhero movies in the superhero genre. So it kind of lasted like 10 years, and it's kind of dying off now. It's slowing down, like it's still has some life in it, but it's slowly on its last legs. And they basically, when they started out, you had the main superheroes that everybody knew about, but then as they were running out of ideas, they're like, well, let's use the secondary sub superheroes. And then when they run out of that, they're like, well, what are we gonna do now? Let's use the sub superheroes that no one ever heard about, and hopefully it's gonna re-energize it or take off again. And the two biggest companies, obviously Marvel and DC, they were competing against each other, but clearly Marvel dominated. The movies are way better. They're more lighthearted. They're PG. Everyone's, went to see them. But, DC was trying more darker stuff. Even though they had better characters, the movies were just bad, subpar. And because there was like literally no competition between the two, because Marvel would just dominate, because it actually had something called story and character development, where people actually cared about the characters, and DC really had none of that. And I think the genre would have lasted longer. It would have continued now instead of teeter off and kind of fading away, if DC actually like had better movies that could compete with Marvel. But because Marvel was such like a complete domination, people are just getting tired of it. They're like, okay, we get it. Like, you win, Marvel. You're the best. You're just beating a dead horse now. Like, so people, like, the competition wasn't there. So they can't compete with themselves. So that's why I think it's dying off. But because it's dying off, people are starting to pay attention again to other genres. And especially people are starting to pay attention to the horror movie genre. But as they're looking at it now, because they were distracted by the superheroes, when they look at it now, they're like, what's going on? It's all reboots and remakes and sequels and prequels. What is this? Where's the original stuff? So I think people now are yearning for something new in the horror movie genre, now that they can pay attention to it and no more superhero distraction. Now finally, let's talk about the third cycle, which we are in right now. Currently, we're in the era of reboots, remakes, reimagining, sequels, and prequels. But, there's so much of it right now that it's getting saturated. It's a joke now. People are getting tired of it. It's starting to die off. And people are saying, we want something new. So 3 things are either going to come out of this. Now, because it's at its last legs, I don't know if that means it's going to last another year, another 2 years, another 5 years. I don't know. It could end, in a year, or it could last a couple more years. But it's at its end. It's dying off. So the three things that could happen, or maybe a mixture of two or more of the three things. What could happen is a new horror genre could just take over unexpectedly. Like it could be anything. It could be, um, demonic. It could be monsters again. It could be exploitation. It could really be any horror genre that just decides to come out on top, and that takes over for a decade or a couple of years or something like that. You could have another anomaly that no one sees coming, like have another rebirth or renaissance of the slasher genre. Secretly, I'm kind of hoping that happens. But so, that might happen and no one could see coming. Or some type of renaissance or rebirth of another genre that nobody sees coming. And that could last for a short while. Or maybe longer, who knows. Or a third option that could, come about could be a new invention or a new gimmick. So maybe they perfect 3D, like a better 3D comes out. Or like IMAX really takes off, or something new develops there. Or maybe VR, virtual reality. Maybe that's the newest big gimmick slash invention that people are talking about going to movie theaters. I think they're starting to have some movie theaters actually do that now. I'm not sure. Look, I need to look that up, or you let me know. But once they perfect the virtual reality, maybe that's the new gimmick, and they're going to remake all the slashers, all the horror movies with virtual reality, where you actually put the headset on and you're inside Michael Myers' house and you're watching, looking around as he's stabbing somebody. Who knows? That could be like the next big thing. But all I am certain of is that the genre we are in right now, the era of reboots and remakes, it's dying off. And people are waiting and they're watching to see what comes next. So, what is next for the horror movie genre? Let's make a prediction based on everything we discussed of horror movie genre throughout the generations. And so, basically, what if, like, there is no gimmicks? Like 3D is played out, 40, 5D, 60, doesn't work or whatever, or there's no new invention. What if VR fails, or it's too clunky, or they haven't worked out all the bugs? So, based on the current genre right now of 99.9% of movies not being original, or in the horror genre not being original, people are clamoring, I noticed, especially lately, since the current genre is fading out. They want something new. They want something original, new ideas. Not just in the horror movie genre, but in general, they want something new. So what if, for my prediction, the next era to come, after finally the reboots and remakes die off, what if the new era is the original era, where actually the new gimmick and the new invention is actually story or plot or character development, which is very rare in the horror movie genre? Why can't you have story plus horror? Like, it's okay to have, the blood and guts, hack and slash, Michael Myers is killing you, but why can't you have the story to go along with it? And, like, I understand why movie studios are doing what they're doing. They want money now, not later. So they're going to hire some random screenplay writer who knows how to type or put a pencil to paper and scribble something, because they give them something right away, because that's what they want. They're like, listen, we want the next big movie or whatever right now, and we want 7 more sequels in the next month, and we'll pay you whatever. Just give us something, anything, and we're gonna hire a famous movie star or the new starlet, and throw in a lot of blood and guts and nudity, and we'll just mask that there's no story, because who has time for that? We don't care. We just want to put something out. So, that's why, like it's important for the up and coming screenplay writers, like if you're one of them or you're writing a book, and like why can't the next movie, the next horror movie to jumpstart or kickstart the horror movie genre, why can't that movie be written by you? I mean, why not? Like, I get if you're up and coming and, or you have something written and you send it out and, a movie studio loves it and they're like, okay, we'll turn it into a movie and we'll pay you all this money. And you're like, yay, my dream came true. I'm so excited. And then the movie studio's like, okay, but we want a sequel and we want it in 3 months or less. And you're like, yeah, but the first movie that I gave you, I spent like all my life or most of my life writing it. I, took my time. I planned out the story and the character development, and the story makes sense and you care about the characters. He's like, yeah, I don't, yeah, but we'll give you double the money. We'll give you triple the money. Just give us something right now. And you're like, oh, okay, I guess. And then you give it to them, and then, you know, the story doesn't make sense, or, the movie ends up not doing as good, or it bombs, and because you didn't have enough time. Now, I get it. I'm not dumb. Like, you want to make money. I want to make money. I'm not going to lie. You can't do nothing in this industry or in this world without having some money. But the point I'm trying to make is that it's it's bigger than this. It's like I'm very passionate about it. I'm sure you are too. And like it's a movement. Like it's really just I'm trying to get like a movement started where like cuz I'm sick and tired. Like I know I'm going on a rant, but bear with me. Like I'm sick and tired of all these reboots and remakes. I'm sure you are too. And I just want something original. Like I wrote a movie too. I wrote a screenplay. Like yeah, it's my dream to have it turned into a movie and people to read it and see it on the big screen. Like yeah, I wish that my movie could be the jump start of the horror movie genre, but it's like it's bigger than this. It's a movement of original story, and that's why I even started this channel where my motto is like story where story comes first. Like when I wrote the screenplay, like yeah, it's a slasher movie horror, like cuz that's my favorite genre. Like yeah, you have a bunch of teenagers and but what I wrote first was a drama. I focused on the characters, character development. I made sure the story made sense. And then I threw in a guy in a mask killing a bunch of teenagers. But if you take all that out, you're left with like story that makes sense and you care about the characters when they get killed off. So so if you're an up and coming screenplay writer going through school or you're trying to write a screenplay, like I'm saying, like focus on the story so that when you're ready to send something out and it gets picked or and then they tell you okay, they put all this pressure on you to make a new story or a sequel, you're prepared. I'm still trying to learn. I don't know everything. I don't even think I know anything really about screenplay, right? I'm passionate about it. I'm like, I'm just being honest and doing the best I can. I'm still trying to learn. If you got any ideas or, we're trying to, it's a community here, trying to help everybody out because it's, like I said, it's a movement. It's bigger than this. Like we're all trying to reach the same goal, which is a great movie, a great story that lasts through the generations. Like think about it, all the remakes and reboots right now, they're all coming from movies, the old classic movies back in the day, they all have something in common. They all have story, like The Exorcist, The Shining, The Sixth Sense, The Silence of the Lambs, all the original like monster movies had original story and characters. But right now, they can't think of nothing new, so they're going to take all the old original characters and stories and just do lackluster carbon copies, reboots, and remakes because it's all about the money. But it doesn't only have to be about the money, you know? So, let's see, what else do I have to point out here? Um, so basically, that's what I'm trying to say. It's that the next era of horror movies is the original era where everything, the story comes first. And that's why I'm hoping when these movie studios, even though they only care about money, I hope when they choose, screenplay writers, they either give them some time or they choose screenplay writers that actually know what they are doing. They know how to write screenplays, with character development and plot and story plus horror. And you can really apply that with anything. You could have like a mindless action movie, but why can't you have a mindless action movie with story? Because then when the sequels come out, why don't they have story too? Not just have, our sequel that has no story. Because then you can make more sequels since they have story. And then the studios, they make money. But yeah, like the long term they make money, but they want money in the short term. I get it. So I'm done ranting. Basically, in conclusion, my prediction for the next era is the original era. Let me know, if I'm close to, if I'm right, if that's what's going to come next, or if you think some other genre in the horror, movies is going to come next. So let me know what you think. And remember, where story comes first. Thank you for listening. And that concludes part 3. I hope you enjoyed it all. Thanks for watching. Please hit the like buttons, share, subscribe, comment down below. Let me know what you think about part 1, 2, and 3. Don't forget to check the part 1 and 2 out. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Please subscribe, hit the notification. And until next time, thank you so much, guys. I'm really passionate about this. And we'll see what comes next in the future of horror.